Let's continue exploring the universe within art and the art behind redstone. I'm your host, OmLedu, and in one of my most recent videos, we built a hidden chest, but David Broom wanted me to make it tileable so that we can have multiple chests lined up in a row. So thank you so much for leaving a comment and a request. I really hope that you enjoy. In this video, not only will we go over how to simply use a lever to activate it, but I'll also touch on using a calibrated Sculk sensor. Except this time, we'll have the Sculk sensor be activated by breaking a block. So if you break a block or a torch or something near this, it will activate. In the previous hidden chest video, we talked a lot about hiding the pistons and hiding the lever, so I won't talk as much about that this time, but I do want to touch on how to activate this using a button instead of a lever or a sensor. But of course, even if we don't talk about it, we will still have to hide the pistons. So get creative with your decorations, experiment with new things, and above all, have fun. You can always check out the previous hidden chest video for some more ideas. One last thing to mention before we jump into it is that chests will automatically separate whenever they are moved. So unfortunately, you cannot move a double chest using pistons because it will automatically detach into singular ones. And here are all the materials that you will need in order to build this. The stuff on the bottom row is per chest section. Then the top row is just a single observer and obsidian plus your input. So if you want to use a lever, a button, or a calibrated Sculk sensor, and if you want to use a button or a sensor, you will also need a copper bulb and a comparator. Your build area is going to be 10 wide, 3 blocks under the floor. So 3 blocks of air between the bottom and the floor. Your chest is going to be on the 3rd block from the front, and remember that this is tileable. You can build as many of these next to each other as you want, but we're going to build 2 slices to start off with. Wherever you want your chest to be, place 2 sticky pistons holding a chest under the floor. Then 1 block behind that hole, we're going to break that out and switch it with a sticky piston, and make sure that the blocks behind the sticky pistons are solid blocks. They need to be solid blocks. Now, even though this is tileable, one of them will be different. So on one of these, place an observer looking at the bottom piston, then place glass next to that observer, and then 3 redstone dust. Then on the other side, place 2 repeaters on maximum delay pointed into the bottom pistons, with solid blocks before them and glass on top. Then place dust on top of the glass and on top of the solid blocks. Then 2 more solid blocks with repeaters on top facing the back with no additional delay. Then place a single dust in front of one of those with 2 repeaters on a max delay going into a solid block. Now place solid blocks above the repeaters and the dust, with more dust on the top of the back 3 blocks, then a piston facing off to the side holding a block of obsidian. That obsidian will prevent that piston from moving, because we need a torch on the side of that piston, and now we need to go over to the other side, place 3 more solid blocks next to these top 3, then 2 more dust next to those, and another piston facing toward the first piston that we placed, like so. And then another torch on that piston, and that's it. We are now totally done. But before we tile it any further, let's go ahead and throw a lever on the side of this block right here. Flick the lever just to test it to make sure that everything is built correctly. The chests should pop up out of the floor, like so. So now to tile this, all you have to do is take the slice that has the glass and just duplicate it infinitely, basically. So we're just going to take this, we're going to expand the glass off and the dust, then we're going to take pistons and place pistons facing up, holding chests, and just expand that entire slice. You don't have to expand the one that has the observer on it, unless it eventually gets so long that you need to actually refresh the signal. But we'll talk about that right after we get done tiling it. So again, just take the slice that has the glass in the front, and just duplicate that slice as many times as you want to. And when you're done, as with all redstone, be sure to test it. Just throw a lever on the side of that block, flick the lever to make sure that all of the chests do in fact pop out of the ground. Now if the signal isn't strong enough and only some of the chests are activating, it is as simple as duplicating that section way over there, over on this side. So we're going to place a dust with 2 repeaters on max delay under these 3 blocks, and it will refresh the redstone so that all of this dust activates. Now for the front, we just have to copy that observer and place it on the other side. So just an observer facing the bottom piston with dust on top of it and behind it. Now if your input line, where the lever is, needs to be stronger, you have 2 choices. One, add another input on the opposite side, so like this lever's on this side, so we would need a repeater on the other side, or you can put a torch underneath this line of blocks with dust on it where the lever is. You can place a redstone torch underneath that so it activates all of that dust. Now, as an example, to run a lever, all we have to do is place a lever and then run dust either to the dust right here or the dust where that glass is. Either one of those two dust in the very middle will activate the entire machine. But again, if the signal is not strong enough, run it to a torch that's underneath that line. Now, if you want to use a Sculk sensor or a button, all we have to do is place a comparator next to that dust, then a bulb next to that comparator, and then run our button or our sensor to that bulb. So the buttons will toggle that bulb, which will then turn it on and off. And if you have to run a torch underneath that line, just run the comparator so that it turns off that torch. Now, the calibrated Sculk sensor is basically the same, but slightly different. So we just need to place the calibrated Sculk sensor next to that copper bulb, or where it will power that copper bulb when activated. But be careful, because if you don't calibrate the sensor, it will just keep activating infinitely. So what we need to do is we need to add a container that is pointed into that little purple section on the calibrated Sculk sensor so that we can calibrate what action it is actually looking for. In this example, we're going to make it look for the breaking of a block. So place a dropper with 7 non-stackable items and 5 stackable items. Now it will ignore all vibrations except for you breaking a block or breaking like a torch or something like that. And if you want it to activate from a different sort of action, all you have to do is change the signal strength of the dropper by adding or subtracting items. If you want to know specifically which actions correspond with what signal strength, you can check out my Sculk sensor guide where I cover all of that. But if you use the example that we just built, all you would have to do is like break a torch to activate your chest popping up. Or better yet, you can just break and replace it really quickly so that it toggles it, between open and closed. And you could even go a step further and add wool to specify where you want that block to be broken. Surrounding a sensor in wool will block vibrations from the directions that the wool is located. So you could make a tube out of wool, and then you would have to break a block directly above the sensor. And so you can just run redstone dust, from the sensor to the bulb. The sensor just needs to activate the bulb. But everything else is exactly the same. The sensor can receive the calibration through the wool by using a comparator, and it can export a signal through the wool, using a comparator as well on the other side. So now it will ignore us breaking a block anywhere except for above it. And the bigger we make the tube, the more specific the area becomes. But again, if you want to learn more about how Sculk sensors work, how to specify certain locations, certain distances, or certain actions, just go check out my Sculk sensor guide. I cover all of that and more. But that's all we got for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, share, and subscribe, and be sure to leave a comment. Let me know what you did or didn't like, if you have any questions or requests, and I will do my best to help you out. It is because of you and your support that I can continue making these videos. So thank you so much for watching, and a big shout out to all of my subscribers, all of my supporters, and to you. Y'all are all totally awesome, and you make me super happy. I really hope to see you again soon, but until then, I've been your host, OmLedu, sharing a redstone trick or two, and reminding you, as always, don't forget to have fun. Bye-bye!